IVM.
There's a quick survey to fill out on ivmpodcast.com/survey. It lets us know a little bit more about who's listening to us. And you know what? We're going to do a few prizes. So, we'll do a random drawing of maybe 10 people and we'll send you all some swag. Remember, that's ivmpodcast.com/survey where you can fill out the survey.
Here's your smart fact of the day. We keep hearing about the words carbon footprint, and what are brands doing to make themselves sustainable, especially about their carbon footprint. Let's understand what a carbon footprint actually is. What is meant by it? A carbon footprint is the total amount of greenhouse gases, which means this includes carbon dioxide and methane that are generated by our actions. The average carbon footprint for a person, for example, in the US is say 16 tons, one of the highest rates in the world. A carbon footprint has become the way in which we measure how good or how bad we are with our actions on the planet that we live in. Should brands be doing something about it? Well, they are, of course, doing something about it. But should they be marketing about sustainability in their communications? Well, this is exactly what Smarter With Sid's episode this time is taking a closer look into. Let's go. I could throw on smart facts after smart facts, which you could potentially think about. One of them is, in 2018 alone, Volkswagen's carbon footprint was more than the annual greenhouse gas emissions of Australia. Yes, that's why the automotive sector is particularly, I would say, one of the least innocent or most guilty in polluting the environment. Of course, there are some others that have come under the radar as well. Fashion with its fast fashion trends, cosmetics with the impact they have on animal life and plant life and the rest of it. Food and beverage with the amount of plastics that they develop and create. And, you see it all around our oceans. You see IT and technology too, surprisingly being involved in it. And funnily enough, even digital agencies and non-profit organizations are not, completely innocent around this factor. So the fact of the matter is that almost every business enterprise today trying to do something in the world in order to, gain a buck, become profitable, gain revenues, do something around it, just exist, for example, it's going to have an impact on the carbon footprint. It's going to have an impact on the water footprint and so on and so forth. So many footprints that we've got to worry about. Now, it has become all the more important for companies and therefore the company's brands to focus on its actions around sustainability and reducing the carbon footprint in a much more focused way. While companies and brands do that, should a brand be actually talking about its sustainability effort? And if yes, how should it be talking about its sustainability effort? Well, this is where I want to go next. Now, while a lot of us might be of the view that brands should do more, companies should do more and talk less about it, I think we all refer to the slightly superficial sustainability-oriented campaigns that we come across, whether they're in advertising, which is funded by a lot of dollars, and people yet still fly private airlines, especially the CXO team of that company. What I think really gets my personal goat is when I go to a really good hotel and then suddenly find out that, they've kept a cute little sign next to the bathroom counter which says, hey, try to reuse your towels because, you will save water and the rest of it. While I'm sure that the message is correct, I think the intent sometimes is what I question, because I'm always wondering, do they really want to reduce the water footprint or do they want to just save on costs? Now, this might be uncharitable of me, but it's a very genuine, natural thought that comes into our minds whenever we are looking at companies and their profit motives as compared to their sustainability. Now, this is a very sad state of affairs that if a consumer cannot trust a company and its actions with what they're saying, it means that we are looking at every company as if it's trying to, kind of jip us, kind of try and wheedle some money out of us or try and, cut corners wherever it can. This is where brands are today. And brands haven't done particularly well for themselves because of a lot of the superficial campaigns that they get into, like this one. But on the other hand, if you look at something like Starbucks has done an amazing thing, right? So Starbucks, if I read a sort of a cup sleeve on the cup, I was just reading it recently, and it said this insulating sleeve is made from 60% post-consumer recycled fiber and uses approximately 45% less material than a second paper cup. Now, this is very different from that hotel message. Why? Because A, it's giving data. B, it's still saying, hey, we're still kind of guilty. We are not completely putting ourselves off the hook. We are not putting the onus on you. We are trying to do something about it, and we are hoping that you help us. I think that sort of an attitude from a brand goes a long way with people like me, and I'm sure you can include yourself in something like this. I think the best possible ad that I've seen is in the automotive sector of all things, which is about the Volvo safety test. I wonder if you've seen this. In case you haven't, just go to YouTube and go to the Volvo safety test. It's a really wonderful story. It's this guy who's looking at this team of scientists who are trying to make Volvo a very safe engine. So it's getting this car crashed into a number of situations, and it's figuring out whether the drivers are safe and whether the car is relatively unharmed and stuff like that. And the tests go on from worse to worse to worse. And he's saying, now we're going for the ultimate test. And they go on, and it's somewhere in the Scandinavian region. So they go on near the Arctic Circle, and in the Arctic Circle, they are about to throw a car into the freezing water and see what happens. And then suddenly the announcer actually kind of sees a glacier crumbling, and the deafening roar of ice hitting the water is what stops the ad and says, climate change, protecting our climate is the ultimate safety test. And now that's pretty ballsy coming from Volvo, because it kind of recognizes it. It's tongue in cheek. It's still talking about product features and its safety measures, but yet it admits that it is perhaps failing in the biggest test of them all. And that's why Volvo is going all electric, it says. And so then there is a commitment. There's a commitment to change, and there's a commitment towards, making an entire company change its actions and not just go for the next quarter's profits. This is making a big difference. You can see a lot of these coming into play now when brands are trying to become more connected with consumers. If you look at fashion brands and their sustainability stuff, I think most fashion brands realize that they can't really do this, in a short span of time. They have to kind of make a pledge to things, make a vow towards things, and work on their actions across maybe a decade or so in order to have any lasting impact. But I think communicating this is still better than making any superficial statement around sustainability. And I'll tell you why I think it is becoming more and more crucial that the communication around this becomes more genuine. See, we are talking to a younger cohort, especially when it comes to fashion, when it comes to clothing, etc. And we are looking at the younger generations who are led by people like Greta Thunberg. Whatever you might think of her, she's still young, and she has a massive impact on Gen Zers and millennials. And those guys are looking at all the oldies, and they're looking at all the old brands and companies and saying, how have you become so blind about profit to destroy our planet? And this is the sort of an approach that kind of destroys any credibility that any brand can have even before it opens its mouth to talk to its consumers. So for Gen Zers and millennials especially, they're the ones who are going to come in. They're going to look out for your sustainability motive. They're going to look out for, what you are doing on a regular basis, what you're doing on a genuine basis, rather than talk some absolute nonsense. I think that if you just focus on it as a growing market segment and keep very selfish reasons to become sustainable, dear brands and dear companies, you still might actually do something good, not only for your brand's profits, but also for our planet. I hope you like this specific episode of mine. I think brand sustainability impact is on the rise. It is something that should be communicated, but it should be communicated in meaningful ways rather than nonsense drivel and looked upon as a CSR activity. I think sustainability is something that every young person is going to look at and is going to make judgments based upon how you're dealing with the planet before they buy your brand. And if you like this episode, I hope you like this. We are going to have many more like these, covering interesting topics which are going to create our future for us, but also trying to get down to first principles and understand what's at work here when it comes to, the world of business or the world of work and the world of marketing and the rest of it. And hey, if you like this, do like and subscribe this particular podcast. And if you like podcasts like these, go to ivmpodcast.com or just download the app or go to wherever you find your podcast from. They've got some amazing stuff there. And hey, if you like me, I'm the traveling professor. You can find me on LinkedIn and on Instagram.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Storytellers and Storytellers, Vineet speaks with drum prodigy Darshan Doshi about helping young Indian drummers take to the world stage. The Simplified Gang delves into the unfortunate financial crisis in Sri Lanka. On Smarter With Sid, Siddharth observes how Lata Mangeshkar was snubbed I tell you, out of memoriam mentions in both the Grammys and the Oscars. This is an absolute disgrace. And on the Life Manifestos, Arena explains how to beat procrastination and show up for yourself. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you enjoyed this show or any of our other shows for that matter, do please tell a friend. Also, don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms you're listening to us on. You can check us out on YouTube as well. On ivmpodcast.com/YouTube, we have a list of all of our YouTube channels. Do check out if your favorite show is available as full video. We are also doing a small listener survey to better understand how you respond to our shows and advertising on the network. We'd really appreciate it if you could spare a few minutes to fill it out. It helps us build better shows for you. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors for this week, SBI Life Insurance, India Water Portal, and Jupiter, a digital banking app. Thank you so much for making this possible.
If you're a cricket fan, check out Edges and Sledges, India's favorite cricket podcast.
The podcast focuses on Indian cricket, the IPL, and has a ton of banter both on and off the field.
We talk about the week's biggest cricket stories with current and ex-international cricketers, coaches, or sometimes just between us.
And it's hosted by me, DJ.
Me, Varun.
And me, Ashwin.
New episodes release every week.
You can catch us on the IVM Podcasts website, app,
or wherever you get your podcasts from.
Check out the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast.